Once upon a time, long, long ago, so long ago that no one's quite sure if it really happened or not, far, far away in Tipperary. There's a story from my childhood. I used to go on holiday night, and I would help the girl in the kitchen peeling potatoes, and she would tell me stories about Paddy O'Dwire. Now, Paddy O'Dwire was a good boy. He was the best boy in all of Tipperary. Wherever he went, everybody would say, "There goes Paddy O'Dwire. He's such a good boy. He's a very, very good boy. He looks after his mother." And that is true. All he did was look after the potatoes and look after his mother. But it was quite boring. And one All Hallows Eve, he remembered that when they were children, they had once climbed over the hill and gone to the ruined castle, and they'd seen that the lights were all turned on and there was noise of dancing and merriment, and they had run away. He told his mother, "I'm going there." "You can't, I am going there." He marched up the hill and down the hill, and he saw the lights. The castle was all lit up. And he walked, brave as brass, up the great staircase into the hall. And it was a great party. It was full of people dancing and drinking. Well, I say people, but they were about this high, and they had slightly misshapen ears, shall we say. It was the good people. And there is nothing that the good people like more than corrupting a truly good person. "It's Paddy O'Dwire, welcome! Welcome to the party, Paddy O'Dwire!" And they gave him drinks, and they danced with him, and they had the best time. It might have been an hour, it might have been two, who knows how long it was. There was a silence in the hall. And a crone came up to Paddy O'Dwire, and she said, "Listen, Paddy O'Dwire, we must now leave to get the centrepiece of our feast, which is the most beautiful virgin in all Ireland. Now, will you come with us?" Paddy O'Dwire said he would. "Ha ha! Paddy O'Dwire's coming! Paddy O'Dwire's coming with us." They went down the stairs, and there was a great semicircle of huge black stallions. And the good people went on and vaulted on 5, 6, 7 to a stallion, but Paddy O'Dwire had one for himself. When they set off, all the horses took off into the air, and they started galloping on the clouds. Every now and again, someone would shout out a landmark called Waterford. Finally, they got to a great city, and in the centre of the city, the horses landed in front of a grand house. And the crone said, "Come with me, Paddy O'Dwire, come." And they went up and they opened a great sash window. Paddy O'Dwire, he could see in the bed a very, very beautiful girl indeed. She had red hair. She was beautiful. They went in there, into the bedroom, and the crone just lifted her out of bed like she was a feather, like she was frozen. And he noticed another crone putting a stick into the bed and muttering some words, and then the stick becoming alive and turning into the girl. They were not quite the same girl, but very like. And then they took the girl out onto a horse, and they were all on their horses, and they all went off up into the clouds and started galloping. The Virgin would be passed from one horse to the next horse, and there was much laughter, much joy, much pleasure. Don't look at me like that. I didn't write the story. It's not me. I'm just telling you what happened. When Paddy O'Dwire could see from certain landmarks that he was getting close to home, he said, would you mind if I have a go with the Virgin? Paddy O'Dwire wants the Virgin! He wants the Virgin! He wants the Virgin! They roared. His corruption was complete, so they passed the Virgin to Paddy O'Dwire. Now, Paddy O'Dwire steered his horse behind a cloud, and they all roared with laughter because they thought he was being modest. He wasn't, because from behind that cloud he could see his cottage and he galloped at it. It took a while for the good people to realize what had happened, and then they pursued him down. He got off his horse and he ran up to the front door, but he was pursued by the good people with his back to the door. He held the Virgin, and they were cross. And the crone came, she touched the Virgin, and the Virgin turned into a rabid, biting dog, but he held her. Then she turned him into a red-hot bar of iron, but he held her. Then into a giant fish, but he held her. Then a silence came upon the good people. They started to mutter, "It's the Bibble, it's the Bibble, the Bibble, the Bibble, the Bibble." But there was Paddy O'Dwire's mother, Mrs. O'Dwire, holding up the holy book. And they started to walk back away, but the crone came up the front and she threw water in the face of the bird, saying, "You might have our Virgin, but you're not going to enjoy her, Paddy O'Dwire." His mother was furious. "What are you doing with this lady? What are you going to get to marry? You can't marry a lady." "I am." Well, they put her to bed, and in the morning they found that she could not talk. They dressed her in some clothes that were not the sort of clothes that she was used to. And then Paddy took her up to the priest and asked if he would marry them. But she can't say yes, Paddy O'Dwire. "No, but she can't say no either." Well, that's not quite the point, is it? So they lived in the cottage, and the Virgin tried to help and tried to be cheerful, but whenever no one was looking, she cried, and she was very, very sad. And she brought no real joy to the cottage, except the joy that beauty brings, which is not to be underestimated. After a year, Paddy O'Dwire said, "This cannot go on. I am going back to the castle." Mother said, "You can't go there after what you did last year. I am going." So he went, but this time he crept up and he lay under the window and he listened to the talk. And he listened and he listened and he listened, and then he heard his name. It was a cruel trick that Paddy O'Dwire played on us last year. What a cruel trick, what a bad man he is. Yes, but he can't enjoy her. And the funniest thing of all is that just one drop of this our very liquid, and, well, she'll be as right as rain." And they all drank and they all laughed. And Paddy O'Dwire waited a bit, and then he marched into the hall. "It's Paddy O'Dwire, everyone! It's Paddy O'Dwire!" And they danced and they drank and they had the best time. And after a while, the crone said, "Now, Paddy O'Dwire, will you drink a jar of this, our very liquid, with us?" Ah, I will, he said. And he took the tankard, and he went, and he sat on the great windowsill. And they all raised their jars, and he filled his mouth with it. And then he bolted out of the window. And they fell about laughing, because they thought he'd drunk too much and he'd fallen out. And then after a bit, some of them thought it'd be quite funny to see whether he'd smashed his head open when he hit the ground. So they went and looked out of the window, and they could see him sprinting. They were furious, but they were too small to jump out of the window. So they went for the stairs, but they were all of them. They all got the stairs got stuck on the stairs, and tumbled all over each other. So Paddy O'Dwire had a good start. But when the good people run, they run. Just got to the garden path where they caught up with him. But his mother came out holding out the Bible. And he rushed in and he spat the fairy liquid out over the Virgin. And she slapped him in the face. Said, "What'd you do that for, Paddy O'Dwire?" She could talk. Then she could tell him that she loved him and she wanted to marry him too. And he said this was glorious and they would go and get married the next day. "No," she said, "we'll ask my father for permission first, I think." But 6 miles away, how we'll write a letter, but how are we going to pay a penny for the stamp? We'll save. So they saved up enough money until they could send the letter. And when no reply came, they saved and they saved and saved, and then they sent another letter. And when no reply came, Paddy said, "Well, that's that then, we'd better get married." And she said, "No, we would better go and find my father." He tried to argue, but, well, they set off. Finally, they got to Dublin, and they got to this grand house, and they went and they knocked on the door, and the butler opened it, and he looked at these 2 ragamuffins, and he looked down his nose. And the Virgin said, May I see my father, please?" "No, daughter, in this house. Please, go away, but if you go down to the back entrance, cook might give you some porridge." "No, I must see my father." This went on for a bit, but fortunately her father came out as he was going out to his club. And she said, Father, he didn't look at her. He said, go away. But Father, well, look, go round the back and they'll give you some porridge." "No, Father, look at me. I do not have any children. My one daughter died a year and a half ago after an illness, and we're very sad. But please, look at me. No, well, can I see my mother? You will not disturb my wife. She's been very upset and she's just beginning, but please let me see." Fortunately, the mother happened to come down the stairs, and of course, unlike the father, she looked and she could recognize her daughter. And then they explained what had happened, and they were so happy that they had the marriage banns read, and they married, and the mother came, and they had lots of children. Now, you can all say with me the ending. They lived happily ever after.